I wanted to ask, what's everybody's kind of prior experience with any sort of programming language, I guess? I want to know how basic to start out with.
I'm learning C sharp and I did a couple of Python stuff, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of things are like between programming languages. A lot of the core concepts are the same. So,
Yeah.
um, but the reason I wanted to talk on some Python stuff today is because I've been going over I've been taking a course on exploit writing, and there's quite a few scenarios where we have to kind of write our own scripts to manage things ourselves. And so I figure we can probably this is a decent example of uh, obviously there's tools for this. But what we're gonna do today is we're basically gonna create a small Python script where, just like if we were running Dirbuster or like wfuzz or something like that, we can actually create a small version of it on our own. In the event that we're trying to do something super manually that we can't do with one of those tools. So this is just kind of an example where we can create our own tools using some sort of programming language. I'm just using Python because I think that's the one that most people are probably familiar with. I made up a AWS instance with this IP address, so this is the URL that we're going to be fuzzing. So the first things we have to do, usually whenever you're going to do some type of software project, it's nice to start at like kind of like the backbone of how are we actually going to do this. So in this scenario, I was gonna do this on my Kali box, but this will be fine. So just so you guys know, if you have this hashtag in front, this is a comment, which means that when we actually run the code, this line is going to be ignored. So I'll be taking notes and comments here. But basically, the gist of how we're going to accomplish this is we're going to open a file from seclist that has a like all of the different directories that we want to brute force. So we're going to open the file from seclist, and then with that, we need to loop through that file. So that way, for each entry inside of that file, we can send out a web request and then check the result and see if that directory exists or not. So we're gonna loop through the file and then send an HTTP. Oops. So yep. So we're gonna loop through the file that has all the directories we want to check for, and then we're gonna send an HTTP request with each entry. And then we need to check the result, um, or check the response code from the website, right? So check the response code. Is it a 404 or 200? And if you're not already familiar, 400 means that the file doesn't exist. And if we get a 200, that means that it does exist. Those are the only two that we're going to need to work with for today. So that's kind of our backbone. Any questions on how we're going to accomplish this so far?
Sure.
No? Yes, no, maybe so?
No, I'm super curious.
Cool. All right. So the first thing that we're going to do, I'm going to drop a link in the meetup text real quick. There's a module we're going to use called requests. And so this is kind of a little cheat sheet if you want to look at requests and how we're going to use it. So for example here, when we want to send the request, we're going to send a GET request. And the way that we're going to do that, firstly, we have to import the module requests. Let me change it here so we got some good syntax highlighting. So we're going to import the module request. So we're going to tell the program import it so we can work with it. And then let's create a variable for the URL here. And so in this case, it's going to be HTTP ://3145.9496 port 8000. Right. And So we have our initial URL, and then to actually send a request, let's go ahead and create a variable so we can deal with it after we kind of make our initial request. So we'll just call it, and then we'll do requests.get. And then if you take a look at the documentation here, you can see you do request.get, and then you put in the URL that's there. So we're gonna do in this case, we'll just pass it the URL that's there. So we'll run this to test it and make sure that it works, and see if make sure that we actually have connectivity. So if we want to check and see the content of the response, we do whatever the variable is .content, or if we want to check for the response code, there is status code, and that'll tell us whether we get a 200 or a 404 there. So we can do a print statement, and then basically print is a function here, and whatever we want to print, we put inside of that. So we want to print what our request was, and then dot status, and I believe it was underscore code, but let me double check. Yep.
Yeah, it is.
Status underscore code. So let's go ahead and we'll save this, and then we will go ahead and run it. So I'm going to just save this on my desktop for the sake of it, and we're going to call this request. Actually, let's call it null.py. And Python scripts end in .py. And then we're going to go ahead and open up a PowerShell terminal to run this. And we'll change to my desktop. And if we use ls, we can see the different files that are there. And we can see we have null.py there. Now, in order to run these scripts, we're going to put Python 3 and then the name of the file. And then you can use tab to complete it just like you would in Linux. So we'll use Python 3 null.py. And then let it do its thing as it sends out this request. It's taking a lot longer than I initially expected. Uh-oh. I hope I'm not having an issue with my instance here. Connection timed out. No. Uh-oh.
I feel your URL supposed to be single.
What's up?
Isn't your URL supposed to be single quotes, not double? Or what are those? Whatever
In
those are called.
Python, the quotes that are here, it actually doesn't matter as long as they
Okay.
match on both sides.
Got it.
Yeah,
You would
Python
be-
is like super forgiving when it comes to white spaces.
You would be correct if it was Python 2, but hopefully you're not using that.
No.
Wait, is it not that way in Python 3? Or are you saying the single is only in
If I
Python?
remember right, Python 2 treated single and double quotes differently.
Well, we may just have to wing this because this is actually not working.
Could you test it by running a different URL?
Yeah, so if I did instead of like this, if I just did google.com and then save it and run it again. Now you can see we get the response of 200 there. So I got something going wrong with my AWS instance, but instead of sitting here and troubleshooting that, we're just gonna pretend like it totally works.
I'll just open up my my router.
What we could actually do, I could make something totally BS here. So I'm just gonna make a couple files, and we're just gonna do it on my home computer here because screw it, it'll at least work. So let's go ahead. I'm just gonna make a couple of files. We're gonna call one secret, and oops, yeah, we'll leave that for now. That'll be fine. And then let's see if I can start Python on here myself. Yeah. Don't yell at me, defender. Then I'll open another instance of PowerShell. Apologies for this. And then let's change back to my desktop and do Python 3 null. Cool. And now you can see we get a 200 here. And then even over here, you can double check and see that we even got the GET request on there. So, but yeah, so that's that. Now so we know we can do the first part. We know we can send a request there, but we need to open a file from seclist. So the way we open files in Linux, or at least the way that I open files, because there's a couple different ways to do it. You do with open, and then you'll put the full path here. And I believe on my Kali machine, it's /user/share /wordlist. Oops. Wordlist/seclist. And then discovery. I'll have to double check what it is. I should have done this before. And then so we do the full path here. And then we put a comma and then whatever permissions we wanted to. So in this case, we're just using read. If we were writing to a file, we would put a W there. But we're just going to read.
Can you execute? Is there an execute? It would be X.
X actually is only for file creation. If you were to execute files, you have to do it a different way. You have to use like the OS module, and then there's specific modules there's like specific functions that go along with doing it that way. This is just for opening it so we can read it or write to files.
Awesome. Thanks. All right. I'm not trying to interrupt.
Yep. No, you're good. And let's go ahead. You can, in this case, I'm doing as F. So that way, this file is going to be saved as the variable F there. So, and then everything that goes underneath everything that you want to do with the file while it's open, has to be tabbed underneath the with there. So what we would do is if we want to work with each line inside of this file, we'll do for line in file or in F. And then we'll go ahead and we'll create a variable. Well, we want to send the request per line, right? And then check the code for it. So, our URL, what we want to do, actually, let me pull up my Kali box real quick so I can show you what's actually happening here. I don't have any IDE on my Kali box, so that's why I'm writing it here, and I'm just going to copy it over. But basically, line here is what's going to get replaced with each line as we go through the file. So if the first line is like a single A and the second line is a double A, the first time we loop through the file, it's going to be an A, and then the second time we go through this for loop, it's going to be the double A, and it's going to get replaced with each line inside of the file. So what we do is we take this current URL, and we want to append on that line there. So we do the URL plus line. And now if we were to print this, print URL, this would actually print HTTP 127.0.0.1 port 80 / and then whatever the first line is. And then once we go through and make the request and we get back up here to the top of the loop, the second time we go through, it'll get replaced with the second line inside of this file, and so on and so forth until the entire file, we've gone through it and made a request for each one. It actually might just be easier if I made a text file with some examples in there to loop through. So we'll call this We'll call this Durbuster. And we'll put some A's and some B's and some C's and secret and owner and just pretend there's a bunch of different entries in here.
Is there a way to break this? Like, is there a character that you could put in here that would break it as well?
No. So anything that we put in, anything that's going to be inside of this list is going to get appended onto the end here. So unless you put, I don't know, like some dashes, that might mess with it. But if you were working with sec lists in this example, sec list is meant for this sort of thing, so it's not going to have anything specific in there like that. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah,
It's just the
absolutely.
word list. So.
Yeah. I just wanted to see if there's anything specific that we should not include in that text file. But...
Anything that will escape out of the variable will break it. So yeah, like any
Right.
backslashes, things like that, could possibly break it.
Yep. So what I did here is I just changed this so the file we're going to open is that text file I just created. And we're going to go ahead and start. It's going to loop through these here and tell us, kind of print off the response codes as we go through them. I think I might get an error because the other file in here is a text file and not like a directory. But I don't know. Let's find out. So let's go ahead and we will run this file again. And we can see now we're printing out the URLs that we're looking for here. So we have http://AAA, and we keep on going through as we go down the list. So you can see that it goes through everything in this list and appends it to the end of that URL. But you can see we only get these 404s. So if we wanted to super manually do things like look for specifically text files, we can add that variable and then also append a .text onto the end of it. And if we were to run this again, this would be basically brute forcing for text files. And if we were to run this again, why am I still getting a... It's only doing secret and then adding a new line there. So for some reason it's doing secret and then new line .text. So let's go ahead. This is kind of out of the scope, I think, here, but we're going to strip off the new line character from this by using the strip method. And let's go ahead and test it again and see if we get the same thing. All right, so now you can see it puts it together there. And there's a billion different ways to do these same exact things when you're doing programming. So you don't necessarily have to do it this way. I promise you there's probably a different way to do it. This is just the first one that came to my mind. So, but what we can do, imagine our word list is a billion times longer. Instead of sitting here and manually searching through all these response codes, what we can do is we can use what we call an if statement, which is basically checking if certain conditions are true. So we can say if request.status_code equals the text 200, then we can make it so we print out what the URL was. So that way we know that that was true. So unless this occasion is true, it is not going to print out the URL. And we know that the URL here is what gets executed if this is true because of that indentation there. Indentations are like the only thing that actually matters with Python. It's kind of weird. But yeah, let's go ahead and we'll try that again. That's not right. Oh, because I have this. Yep, I have that print there. No, I didn't want to first press it. Thank you. So it didn't like this matching there for the string, it looks like. So let's go ahead and try it if it's just a number. And there you go. Now we have this one URL here that we know this one actually exists on the server that we're kind of doing our recon on. So yeah, we just literally have a quick little 6-7 line script that can replace those automated tools that we see there. And if you want to customize it more, you absolutely can. Like if you didn't want to look for text files, but you wanted to look for PHP files or something instead, you're absolutely able to do that. So it kind of just gives you a manual way to do it because there are scenarios where you might need to do that.
Gotcha. This is just pretty much brute forcing it, right?
Any questions?
This is pretty much just like brute forcing it.
Yep, this is exactly just checking brute forcing for directories because sometimes what happens with web developers is they end up creating something in the background and then or something's in the web root that's not supposed to be there and we're able to access it. So it might not be linked anywhere, but if we brute force for it, then we can actually find it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, but if you want to check for all of the linked, like all the things that are actually linked through a website, you can use spidering, and there's a bunch of tools with like Burp Suite or Zap that are able to do those for you too. This is just a way that I'm trying to show off that we can do some manual creation of some tools when our other tools fail, and it gives us a lot of manual control over the same sort of things.
For sure. Have you
Yeah.
figured out a way to kind of like look for specific directories? Or I mean, look for specific keywords in directories. So instead of looking for like a text file in this case, right?
Yeah. So So originally the plan was I was gonna use Secless, and Secless has an entire section just dedicated to like common directories or files inside of like web content. I'll put a
Gotcha,
link to
okay.
it in the meetup text.
Okay, appreciate it.
Yeah, there's like password word lists, or there's usernames, web content, etc. Like Secless is the shit. So
Yeah, alright.
Hey, real quick, Barry, do you mind taking that file you just created and just saving it and pasting it in the channel so I can link to it?
Sure.
And for those that don't know, you actually, I think even outside of Kali, you can apt-get install Seclist onto your machine without having to go the route of using Git if you didn't want to. So it's just another option. I think it's literally just app install Seclist.